All right, everybody. Welcome to the Combatcast. Chevy, the man called Dave. And man, we got a jack show up here this week. But before we get started, Chevy, tell people what they can expect in the future.
All right, next week, October 28th, Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou, boxing match, pay-per-view, ESPN Plus. We all know it's coming. Getting excited for it. And then November 4th, we're back with the UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Almeida, the Black Beast back in action in Brazil. And then after that, November 11th, card everyone's looking forward to, probably card of the year, UFC 295, Jones versus Miocic for the heavyweight belt in New York.
It's going to be a blockbuster of a card, and I'm excited. But we got a blockbuster of a show today, including this is what we're going to start things off with. UFC 294 is this weekend. Chevy, before we get into the main card, any fights you want to profile?
Yeah, on the prelims, Trevor Peek is fighting Magomed Ankalaev. I don't know who Magomed Ankalaev is, but I do know who Trevor Peek is. I think he has all finishes in the UFC. He has terrible technique, but he's just like a true dog in there. So fun guy to watch for sure. So keep an eye out for him. And then featured bout on the prelims, Tim Elliott versus Islam Makhachev. Excellent matchmaking in the flyweight division. So we're looking forward to that one. But let's get into the co-main and main event here. Also, before the co-main, Johnny Walker getting a shot against Ankalaev for a light heavyweight title eliminator probably. So we don't need to go through that, but good luck to Johnny Walker, I guess.
Whatever you want to do. I actually have everybody. I had everything for the main card today.
Did you? Okay, well, I didn't prep everything main card, but we can go over that one if you want to go over that one.
Yeah, I'm picking. What fight was that there? Johnny Walker and what?
Ankalaev.
Yeah, I got Ankalaev all day. This guy he's virtually undefeated. All right, I say this all the time whenever we preview this guy. He's got one loss to Paul Craig. 1 second of the final round of a 3-round fight, he gets submitted. He gets caught in a fight that he was winning. All right, his only other fight that he has, not even a blemish, is a draw. His most recent fight to Blachowicz, and a fight where they interviewed Blachowicz afterwards, where Blachowicz felt like he didn't win the fight. So I think Walker's got the power. He can always catch somebody. He's got that puncher's chance, but you got to favor Magomed here.
Yeah, for sure. Smart money's on Ankalaev, but Johnny Walker has been winning fights that he shouldn't be winning lately. Been fighting a little bit smarter, more controlled. So I'm rooting for him. If the fight gets to the ground, he's screwed, but he can knock anyone in the world out. So I'm rooting for him for sure.
And I'll just tell you what, too. What's the other fights on this main card? I'm just going to make a quick predictions here.
Let's look it up.
Ed Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, that one, I got to go with Nurmagomedov for sure. He's a monster for sure. He's kind of flying under the radar for the most part. I don't know too much about Murin, though. So
I'll just tell you that neither guy has ever been finished.
Yeah.
I was there today, and all the losses they do have, they've never been finished. So Nurmagomedov, though, more experience, 6-2 in the UFC, more experience with quality competition. I look for him to get the win. And then the second fight here, you got
Ikram Aliskerov versus Warley Alves. That should be a fun fight too, actually.
Yeah. So Ikram, is that how you say his name?
Yeah, Ikram.
Yeah, he's 14-1, 5 KOs, 5 subs, 4 decisions. His only loss is early in his career to Khamzat Chimaev.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for Ikram to pull this off here. He's already 1-0 in the UFC, so the initial jitters you think he would have, he's already got that win. I think he'll beat Warley here too. And,
Warley been on tough times too. I think he's lost a lot recently. So it's gonna be a tough fight for him for sure.
He's lost 2 in a row and 3 out of his last 4. So
yeah. So we'll see.
There's a quick synopsis of the rest of the card. Let's go to the main event.
All right, our pieced together co-main and main event after fallings out. But shout out to the UFC also before we get into this for being able to save this, putting this together. Almost more excited for these fights. Arguably. So shout out to Dana and Hunter and all them for putting this together. But all right, Kamaru Usman versus Khamzat Chimaev.
Okay, one thing too, I think this has been called a title eliminator possibly for middleweight now. It's very strange considering both these guys have been primarily fighting at welterweight. This is Usman's debut at at middleweight rather. So very strange, but they are both big names, and on a technical level, it's going to be hard to argue that these aren't going to be two of the best in the world. Like Chimaev has already fought at middleweight a couple times, and if Usman can beat Chimaev, then he's probably going to be a problem in this division. But that being said, here's the quick synopsis. Khamzat Chimaev, 12-0, 6 KOs, 5 subs, 1 decision. His 1 decision win is over Gilbert Burns. That was the toughest fight he's had so far. I think that's interesting to note because that's the last fight he really had at welterweight, in the sense he did fight Kevin Holland, but that ended up being a catchweight where he completely missed weight for that fight.
8 pounds, yeah.
Yeah, so I do kind of wonder if Chimaev was, at that point with Burns, was already seeing kind of the end of his welterweight days. But nonetheless, his wins over the Leech, Gerald Meerschaert, Gilbert Burns, Kevin Holland, I mean, it's quite an impressive resume already for so early in his career. Usman, though, 20-3, 9 KOs, 1 submission, 10 decision wins. Coming off his first 2 losses in a row, he lost his title in a fight that he was winning by a head kick, and then lost a very close fight by decision in the rematch with the challenger. I mean, with Leon as the challenger. And so, Usman has been the man mostly at welterweight. You could even make a case that Usman is right there under GSP, I think, as the greatest welterweight of all time for sure.
There's an argument for sure, yeah.
Absolutely. So this is the makings of a great fight because Khamzat Chimaev, what he's dangerous at is striking and wrestling. He's really good, but usually if you're a good striker, he has the ability just to take people down. He might not have that here with Usman. Usman's got great wrestling pedigree. He's not sucking weight this time. He's going to be a bigger version of himself. So we'll see how that plays into that. And as we've seen at welterweight, when Usman fought another guy who, deleted the wrestling advantage with Kobe, we had some of the best fights ever as far as most exciting. So I think it's an interesting matchup. I'm going to favor Chimaev here just because we've seen him fight at this weight class a little bit, and that experience might play the factor, I think. But I think this is a pick'em because there's really too many X factors. How Usman looks here at middleweight is going to be a big deciding factor in this fight.
Yeah, I don't think people give Kamaru the respect that he deserves recently based off those 2 losses. I think people think that he's kind of washed, which, he is older at this point, but I think you're discrediting Leon Edwards when you look at it that way. He's a monster, and I think not cutting weight is going to be helpful for him. But he can't out wrestle or outstrike Khamzat. I don't think. I don't think he's going to have the mentality, edge on Khamzat. Khamzat's an absolute monster. So I'm having a hard time seeing exactly how he gets it done if he's going to win. I assume he's going to be smaller because Khamzat has known he's going to middleweight. So he's been putting that muscle on to cut down to 185. Kamaru has not been planning for that. So I think plus it's on short notice. Khamzat had a camp, Kamaru doesn't. So I think it's just too many things going against Kamaru. If this was, a full 8 or 10 week camp for both guys, I would agree with you. I'd say a pick'em fight, but unfortunately, it would be phenomenal if Kamaru won, but I think that Khamzat finishes him inside those 3 rounds. So I think maybe he hurts him and he jumps on something and gets a sub in round 3. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope Kamaru shocks everyone. shows us just how great he really is. But I'm going with Khamzat.
You know what's interesting about that is that your logic too about the short notice, I kind of forgot about with this fight, and I remembered it with our main event, which we'll talk about next, because it certainly becomes a factor again.
Yeah, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski 2.
That's right. Volkanovski, 26-2, 13 KOs, 3 subs, 10 decisions, featherweight champ. Only loss in UFC is to Islam. A very close fight.
Lost, quote unquote.
Right. Yeah. So it's arguable, as you can hear from my colleague here. So Jeffdo, 24-1. His only loss, he got caught in like his second fight ever in the UFC. He's got 4 KOs, 11 subs, 9 decisions. He's won 12 in a row. He's 13-1. And ultimately here we're talking about, and we saw it in their first fight, this is going to be a fight at, if you want to see high-level MMA, whether it's wrestling, striking, submission attempts, like you're going to probably get a little bit of everything here. And smart money would be on Islam for what Chevy talked about, I think, for the co-main event. Volkanovski's taken this on short notice. And when you start breaking it all down, these X factors all kind of factor in here. But here's one other X factor. I kind of thought, almost as we were talking about this, this popped in my head. Volkanovski, even the first time he took this fight, he talked about how people said, "Oh, why go up? You could lose." And he's like, "That's a horrible mentality." He's like, "Why wouldn't I go up?" He's like, "Test myself." And this is a guy who constantly wants to prove himself, constantly wants to test himself. Took this fight on short notice, and as Dana White said, Islam too. There was no hesitation, either one of them. So they're both very strong. But Volkanovski's the one here whose back is against the wall, because even though it's short notice, if he loses this fight, he'll probably never get another shot at the lightweight title with Islam. And it'd probably be a long, long time before he would just get a shot at the lightweight title again even. So that being said, I think it's crazy, but I think something's going to motivate Volkanovski here. And I think he's going to get the job done. I'm going to say a late finish, round 4.
Bold claim. Yeah, I like that.
I know. I was going with Islam all day, but let's pick it.
Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier, I thought Volkanovski won the last fight with his great cardio at the end of the fight. Taking a short notice fight is never good for a guy that relies heavily on tiring out his opponents. That is how Volkanovski was getting the edge on Islam and later in the fight. So I think Volk needs to go in there and get an early finish if he's going to win. I think he alluded to that a little bit in a few interviews I've seen. So Makhachev knows this. So I assume he goes very wrestling heavy early on to try to wear on Volkanovski's gas tank, because Volk has not had a camp and Islam has. I think they would be somewhere around even in cardio at this point. But, I'd love to say that Volkanovski goes in there with this mentality, knowing what he needs to do and gets a TKO early in like round 2 or something like that. But smart money says Makhachev gets a easier decision win this time. So I think that's probably what's going to happen. But oh man, am I rooting for Volkanovski in this one? Yeah,
he might be what he was the Max Holloway here, Islam, because we thought Max might have won the first fight kind of close. Volk got the decision, but then the second time, Volk did what he had to get the win. And now, given the circumstances like that might be what happens here with Islam.
Yeah.
We'll see. Either way, some of the greatest fighters in the world this weekend are going to fight high-level MMA, high-level combat sports.
And it's on early, also, 2 p.m. Eastern.
It is on early.
Yeah.
That's not what we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about the opposite of high-level combat sports. Dylan Danis, Logan Paul, they got it done in a boxing ring. So
I do believe this played out exactly the way that I said it was going to. Like, didn't I say that he was going to try to choke him out or whatever and get disqualified? Like, I'm pretty sure I said that.
You did say that, and you were 100% correct. It's funny. Hawani had an interesting take on this. He actually said that he felt like Danis went in there and he was hoping to tire Logan Paul out early, and that, you know, he figured bigger guy, he'd probably wear out. He said, but then when he got hit a little bit in round 2, he realized, I don't really want any part of this. And then he just started to try to avoid getting knocked out and just started doing, you know, silly things. And of course, this led to the disqualification victory. What I will say, one thing I liked, because I didn't like any of this from what I saw, it's pretty ridiculous, over the top. But I think a couple things I'll say about this. One, now people will know, you know, when they order these Misfits box and Prime cards, this is definitely more prone to what you're going to get. And I would say Logan Paul's brother, Jake, is actually more on the serious side of what you're going to. Yeah. And that's saying whatever it is. But, you know, it's more entertainment. It's more goofy. Don't take this so seriously if you're going to buy this and this is what you're into. Know what you're getting. And the other thing I will say, one thing about Logan Paul, which I'm sure, again, combat sport fans maybe not be a fan of, but as a guy who we kind of work with his podcast now, I kind of had to say, well, after he won his fight and he gets on there and he talks about how this is my hobby, WWE is my passion, and he challenges Rey Mysterio. Yeah, obviously that's a predetermined thing or that. But in my mind, I started thinking, you know, hats off you for just having this athletic competition, you know, as crazy as it was. And you still were enough thinking, okay, I got to promote my next venture that I'm doing. And you didn't forget about it. You kept your eyes on the prize and you did that. So as a hustler, my hat's off to you, Logan Paul. As a boxer, maybe not. And Dylan Danis certainly wasn't up to this task at all.
Yeah, nobody better than Jake and Logan at promotion and all that, for sure. Shout out to them. I mean, what they've built with this whole like YouTube boxing thing is infuriating and also impressive at the same time. As a money-making venture to get people to watch people who don't know how to fight at all fight is incredible. But yeah, the actual fight, and we don't even need to talk about the KSI and Tommy one. I watched that as well. It was absolutely horrendous. It was the worst fight I've ever seen, for sure. But yeah, Logan and Dylan, the goal was to go in there. They both live on the internet. The goal is to not become an internet meme of getting knocked out. Mission accomplished. Does not make for an exciting fight. Yeah, like I don't know what to say. What I thought was going to happen, some carny bullshit, is what happened. So I was surprised that Dylan was not able to take Logan down when he did try to take him down. So
yeah,
I don't know what else. Dylan Danis' striking was atrocious. You could tell he did not do any striking in a camp or at all. It was just god awful. But I'm, you know, I won't be fooled into buying one of these ever. I didn't buy this one either, but I won't be fooled into buying one of these ever.
Well, we'll move on to our next subject here. But before we do, we got a question in the chat here, and I find it interesting. If Khamzat were to get the title fight against Sean Strickland, who do you guys think is most likely to win? So I will just say a lot of this is going to depend on how Khamzat looks this weekend. If Chimaev looks as dominant and impressive as I think he will, because I think middleweight is definitely his weight class, then I would favor him over Strickland. That being said, the Strickland we saw show up and what he did to Adesanya, I want to see that guy fight again, because even though Sean's good, I was so impressed at how much Adesanya froze that, you know, I still wonder, was it Strickland or was it Adesanya just freezing up a little bit, because it was so crazy to watch. But, you know, you hear his teammates like Chris Curtis talking about, no, this is what Sean does all the time to people. So it would be fascinating. And I do think Chimaev and Strickland have sparred together a little bit too in the past, but I would go Chimaev, gun to my head.
Yeah, Sean Strickland is not walking down Chimaev like he was doing to Izzy. I'll tell you that. I don't think that ends very well for Strickland. So I think he gets finished inside 2 rounds. So we'll see, though, most likely.
And I like the way you worded that because that's another great segue. Speaking of ending, Showtime has decided that they're going to end their boxing and MMA relationship. And you won't see boxing or MMA on Showtime anymore. Now, this is more of a loss to boxing for me. Bellator is already on its last legs. Boxing has so much history on Showtime. And I'm kind of wondering what this will mean for Showtime pay-per-view as far as boxing goes, too. Is that just gone altogether? Or is it just not going to air on the platform of Showtime, the premium channel? I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I would imagine you might see like some one-off things. Like, they did that Jake Paul boxing thing. I wonder if you see some random one-off things like that because they have the ability to do the production, but they might just have gotten all the way out of it. I know Espinoza has been laid off at this point, so I think they just pulled all the funding for that. Everyone is pirating the cards or whatever, so it's tough on them, when you're paying your executives like hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever through all that time, and people figure out that they can get the product for free. It's hard to keep paying all these people. So
for sure.
End of an era for sure, though, with HBO boxing closing down recently and now Showtime. ESPN is really the only one holding it down at this point. So
yeah, it'll be interesting to see. MMA, I think, is really, this is just another check in the column, I think, for MMA being the top combat sports right now.
Yeah. You know what else is killing boxing is when boxing gets a star like a Canelo or a Mayweather or something like that. They start their own production company, and then they have to co-promote with Showtime or something like that. So they get a bigger piece of the pie. And so, it's a business move for sure, but that's why, we're seeing HBO and Showtime go away. They're not making the money that they were making before.
So I laugh at that a little bit because I can't help but think, everybody complains about Dana White and the UFC and the monopoly they have, which they do. And there are issues with that, big issues. But like what you're talking about, you can kind of see the problem when you give people almost too much freedom.
Right. Yeah, because just think about if you had more than one Conor McGregor in the UFC.
Sure.
Because he's basically the only one at that level where, he co-promotes with the UFC, not necessarily co-promotes, but his products are all over the ring and all this. He's getting a substantially large piece of the pie. None of the other UFC fighters are getting that. They're getting their pay-per-view points and their flat pay or whatever, and that's you get what you get. The UFC takes the rest. And, what they do with it is their own thing, whether it's, doing productive things like building the PI and all that, or, giving out tiny bonuses to fighters and Dana White and Hunter Campbell take the rest or whatever. Who knows? But
so I will just say this in closing, as far as Showtime goes, I am curious to see if HBO gets back in the game and, maybe, there's talk about, we're seeing live sports on HBO Max now. Maybe we'll see boxing reemerge at some point.
We'll see. It does seem to be building in popularity because of these YouTube things, but I don't think the fans are really crossing over that much when it comes to, watching the low level boxers. You can pull for Francis Ngannou and Fury or Fury Usyk, AJ, you can pull for those guys. But other than those top tier guys, nobody's watching boxing that isn't already a boxing fan,
I agree. Now, before we get out of here, there were some fights this past weekend. Why don't we just quickly go over the results? And I'm going to give you two fight ideas I had. But go ahead for the main event and the co-main event.
Well, before that, because remember I was not high in the co-main event, let's just talk quickly. Jonathan Martinez versus Adrian Yanez, bantamweight matchup. I said this was probably going to be fight of the night. Well, unfortunately, Jonathan Martinez was too effective with his kicking game, and he leg kicked Yanez early, damaged the leg, and Yanez basically had to fight on one leg until he ultimately was finished via leg kick in round 2. So disappointing, but great game plan and execution from Jonathan Martinez.
No doubt. Martinez is definitely one to watch for.
All right, the co-main event, Jennifer Maia versus Vivian Arroyo.
Arroyo gets the win. I thought from what I saw, pretty convincing, but just not a very entertaining fight. I was just looking at some potential fights for her, and one that popped up in my head I liked was Macy Barber.
Oh, yeah, that's a good matchup.
Yeah, they're actually next to each other in the rankings, too.
Yeah, that's a good matchup for sure. Gives Arroyo, who is a skilled fighter but doesn't have much buzz around her, if she could get a win off Macy Barber, steal some of that shine for sure.
Yeah, and it's a quality opponent for Macy to keep improving on too. So that's just why
absolutely. Yeah. All right. Main event: Sadiq Youssef versus Edson Barboza.
So Barboza gets almost taken out early here, and I think it's almost like people are writing him off right there. And he survives somehow, and he ends up coming back and winning this fight. Now, I mean, it was a close fight. I thought Barboza did enough to win, but it was a close fight. Could have gone either way. But Barboza got the win. Youssef was a gentleman about it too, and realized that he should have probably done more to take him out early. And I think they had nothing but nice things to say about it. So this was a great fight. I'll let you talk a little more about it. But my matchmaking that I really like on this one, I think you will, if it lines up, Calvin Kattar, who had ACL surgery in October of last year, I believe that was his last fight, takes 6 months to a year, assuming maybe he was on the 6 month side and he's been back in there. Barboza's going to need some time off here too. I think that would be a great fight. Stylistically, Kattar, a guy who a little above him, but again, coming off an ACL injury, and stylistically, I think that fight would be very exciting.
Oh yeah, that'd be a super fun fight to watch for sure. I'd be down for that. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a good fight to come back for Kattar. You know what you're going to get with Barboza. You're not going to get a whole lot of grappling or anything like that. So that's what Kattar would be looking for sure. So that's a great matchup. As far as the fight, yeah, Sadiq, I'm pretty sure got a 10-8 in the first round, and I think I gave every other round to Barboza after that. So his ability to survive, I don't remember how old he is. He's like 37 or something like that. So his chin at this point in the game still holding up. And obviously his will and desire unmatched. So good for him. Excellent determination to come back and get that win.
No doubt. All right, guys, that's going to about do it us for this week. Chevy, tell people what we got coming up one more time.
All right, October 28th, Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. And then November 4th, UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Almeida from Brazil. And then moving from one heavyweight card to another heavyweight card, November 11th, UFC 295, Jones versus Miocic for the heavyweight belt.
All right, guys, we're here every Tuesday. Like and subscribe, and you'll get that notification of when we come on, and maybe you'll enjoy the content. All right, we appreciate you. Enjoy the fights this weekend. UFC 2.